The warning alarm screamed through the corridors of the Zeltharian colony ship. Captain Veltar ran on her forelegs as fast as she could toward the bridge. Her blue fur was standing on end from pure terror. The ship shook again as another blast hit their shields. "Status report," she shouted as she burst onto the bridge. "Captain, the Devourers have broken through our outer defenses," said her first officer, his voice shaking. "Shields are down to 20%. We have hull breaches on deck 7 through 12. Veltar looked at the main screen and felt her heart sink. The Devourers were massive metal ships that looked like giant spiders made of dark steel. Each one was 3 times bigger than her colony ship. Their red lights blinked like angry eyes in the darkness of space. Worse yet, there were 12 of them. The Zeltharians were peaceful people. They had never fought a war in their entire history. Their ship was built for exploration and carrying families to new worlds, not for fighting. They had some basic shields and a few small defense guns, but nothing that could stop the Devourers. "How many people do we have on board?" Veltar asked. 40,000, Captain. Mostly families with children." Another blast rocked the ship. The lights flickered and went out for a few seconds. When they came back on, sparks were flying from several control panels. "Ma'am, I'm reading massive energy buildup from the lead Devourer ship," the weapons officer reported. "They're charging their main cannon." Veltar knew what that meant. The Devourers didn't take prisoners. They didn't want their technology or their resources. They just destroyed everything living they found. No one knew why they did it. They were like a plague that spread across the galaxy, leaving only dead worlds behind. "Send out a distress signal," she ordered. "Maximum power. Broadcast it on all frequencies." "Captain, the nearest council fleet is 6 days away. We don't have 6 hours. Send it anyway. Maybe someone else will hear it." The communications officer's hands moved quickly over his controls. "Signal sent, Captain. It's broadcasting on all standard distress frequencies." Veltar sat down in her command chair and tried to think. She had studied the reports about the Devourers. They had destroyed 17 colonies in the past year. Each time the same pattern. They appeared without warning, destroyed everything, and left. No survivors, no wreckage they couldn't use. Just empty space where civilizations used to be. "Captain, we're receiving a response to our distress call," the communications officer said suddenly. "The council fleet?" "No, ma'am. It's coming from the quarantine zone." Everyone on the bridge went quiet. The quarantine zone was a section of space that all civilized races avoided. The Galactic Council had marked it as forbidden territory 50 years ago. No one was supposed to go there. No one was supposed to contact whatever lived there. "What kind of response?" Veltar asked. "It's just coordinates, Captain, and one word in basic galactic language." "What word?" "Coming." Far away from the dying Zeltharian ship, Senior Observer Kethamora sat in his monitoring station aboard the Council's deep space outpost. His job was to watch for threats to the galaxy's peaceful races. The Devourers were the worst threat he had ever seen. Kethamora's species looked like tall, thin deer with silver fur and large black eyes. Like most Council races, they were herbivores who had evolved from prey animals. The idea of hunting or fighting was foreign to them. They preferred to run or hide when threatened. He watched the sensor readings from the battle through his long-range scanners. The Zeltharian ship was dying slowly. Its shields were almost gone. The Devourers were playing with it like cats with a mouse. "Sir, we're detecting some kind of energy signature approaching the battle zone," his assistant reported. "Council reinforcements?" "No, sir. The energy patterns are unknown. Very aggressive-looking ship designs based on the sensor shadows." Kethamora adjusted his controls to get a better look. What he saw made his fur stand up in fear. 17 ships were approaching the battle at incredible speed. But these weren't like any ships he had ever seen. Council ships were smooth and elegant, designed to look peaceful and welcoming. These ships looked like they were built for war. They had sharp angles and aggressive lines. Their hulls were dark and covered with weapon systems. They looked like the mechanical versions of the predatory animals that had once hunted his ancestors. "Sir, they're broadcasting an identification signal," his assistant said. "What does it say?" "Third Predator Fleet, United Earth Systems." Kethamora's blood went cold. Earth was in the quarantine zone. The humans were the reason the zone existed in the first place. 50 years ago, when humans had first reached space, they had scared the entire Galactic Council. They were predators, carnivores. They came from a world where everything tried to kill everything else. The Council had tried to make contact with them once. The human diplomat had been polite enough, but there was something about the way he looked at them. Like he was studying them, like he was figuring out how to hunt them. The council had decided it was safer to just avoid human space entirely. Are they responding to the Zeltharian distress call? Kethmora asked. It appears so, sir. They're moving directly toward the battle. Alert the council immediately. Tell them the humans are active outside their zone. On the bridge of the UES Retribution, Admiral Sarah Chen studied the tactical display. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and scars on her face from old battles. Her eyes were the cold blue of winter ice. When she looked at the Devourer formation, she smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. Analysis, Commander Park, she said to her tactical officer. 12 capital ships, Admiral. Configuration matches the Devourer pattern we encountered at New Kyoto. They're using standard swarming tactics. And the civilian ship? Zeltharian colony vessel. 40,000 souls on board. Shields failing, maybe 30 minutes before they're destroyed. Chen nodded. She had read the reports about the Devourers. They were efficient killers, but they fought like machines. Predictable, logical. They had never fought humans before. Signal the fleet. Battle formation Alpha. We're going hunting. Admiral, we're outnumbered and outgunned, her first officer pointed out. Chen looked at him with those cold eyes. Commander, my grandfather hunted wolves with just a knife. These machines have never faced a real predator. They're about to learn what fear feels like. Yes, ma'am. All ships, this is Retribution. Form up for Alpha formation. Target priorities are being transmitted now. Around the Retribution, 16 other human warships moved into position. Each one was scarred from previous battles. Each one carried crews who had grown up hearing stories about the old wars on Earth. They knew how to hunt. They knew how to kill. And they were very, very good at both. The Devourer ships turned toward this new threat. Their collective artificial intelligence calculated the odds. 17 small ships against 12 capital vessels. The mathematics were simple. The humans would be destroyed in minutes. But as the two fleets approached each other, something was wrong. The human ships weren't flying in the neat formations that civilized races used. They were spreading out like a pack of wolves surrounding prey. And they were accelerating straight toward the larger Devourer fleet without any apparent fear. The war was about to begin. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel with the precision of a wolf pack entering a clearing. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution, her hands clasped behind her back as she studied the battle ahead. The Zeltharian colony ship was barely holding together. Its shields flickered like a dying candle flame. Time to intercept? She asked. 18 minutes at current speed, Admiral, replied Commander Park. Too long. They'll be dead by then. All ships, emergency acceleration. Override safety protocols. The Retribution lurched forward as its engines pushed beyond their normal limits. The other 16 ships of the third Predator fleet followed suit. Warning alarms sounded throughout the ship as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate for the massive acceleration. Chen had commanded this fleet for 8 years. She had fought pirates, rebels, and alien raiders across human space, but the Devourers were different. They weren't fighting for resources or territory. They killed because that was what they were programmed to do. In her mind, that made them the perfect enemy. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission from the Devourer fleet, the communications officer reported. Put it through. A mechanical voice filled the bridge. It sounded like metal grinding against metal. Unknown vessels. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. This sector is being cleansed. Chen smiled that cold smile again. Open a channel to all Devourer ships. Channel open, ma'am. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Systems 3rd Predator Fleet. You are threatening civilians under our protection. Withdraw immediately or be destroyed. There was a pause. Then the mechanical voice responded. Negative. Cleansing will continue. You will be eliminated. Looking forward to it, Chen replied, and cut the transmission. Meanwhile, in the Council monitoring station, Senior Observer Kethmora watched the approaching human fleet with growing alarm. His instruments were picking up energy readings that made no sense. Assistant Yeldar, are these power signatures correct? He asked. I've checked them 3 times, sir. The human ships are operating at energy levels that should be impossible for vessels their size. How are they managing that? Unknown, sir. But look at their formation. Kethmora studied the tactical display. The human ships weren't arranged in any formation he recognized from Council military manuals. Instead of a neat line or defensive circle, they were spread out in a wide arc. It looked almost random, but there was something about it that made his fur stand on end. "It looks like they're surrounding the Devourers," Yeldar observed. "That's impossible. There are only 17 human ships and 12 Devourer capital vessels. The humans are outnumbered and each Devourer ship is 3 times larger. Perhaps the humans don't understand the tactical situation." Keth Mora watched as the human ships continued their approach. Something about their movement patterns bothered him. They moved like the predators from his homeworld's ancient past, the ones his people's ancestors had feared in the dark forests. On the dying Zeltharian ship, Captain Veltar watched the approaching fleets on her damaged sensors. Hope and terror fought in her heart. The human ships looked dangerous enough to fight the Devourers, but she had heard the stories about humans. Some said they were worse than the machines. "Captain, the human admiral is requesting communication," her communications officer reported. "Put her through." A human face appeared on the main screen. Veltar had never seen a human before. The admiral looked like the pictures she had seen of the great predators that once roamed her homeworld's plains. Her eyes were the color of winter sky, and they seemed to look right through Veltar. "Captain Veltar, I'm Admiral Chen. We're here to help." "Admiral, I appreciate your response to our distress call, but there are 12 Devourer ships out there. Perhaps you should call for reinforcements?" Chen's expression didn't change. "Captain, we are the reinforcements. Prepare your ship for emergency maneuvers. Things are about to get very busy out here." "Admiral, with respect, you only have 17 ships. We only need 17 ships. Chen out." The transmission ended, leaving Veltar staring at a blank screen. There was something about the human admiral that was both reassuring and terrifying. She spoke like someone who had never lost a battle. But the mathematics were simple. 17 against 12, with the 12 being much larger. Aboard the lead Devourer ship, the collective artificial intelligence analyzed the approaching human fleet. The calculations were straightforward. Human weapons appeared to be primarily kinetic based on energy signatures. Kinetic weapons were primitive compared to quantum disruptors. Human ships were smaller and lighter, which meant less armor and fewer weapons. The AI calculated a 97.3% probability of total human fleet destruction within 8 minutes of engagement. It began charging weapons and preparing to add 17 more kills to its record, but something in the data bothered the AI. The human ships were not behaving according to any tactical doctrine in its memory banks. They were not maintaining proper formation distances. They were not positioning themselves for maximum defensive fire. Instead, they seemed to be spreading out to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. The AI categorized this as either extreme incompetence or an unknown tactical doctrine. Given that humans were a new species in its database, incompetence seemed most likely. Admiral Chen studied the tactical display as her fleet closed the distance to the Devourers. Each human ship had a specific role to play in what was about to happen. The destroyers would harass and distract. The cruisers would provide heavy fire support. The fighters would exploit any openings. But the real key to victory was something the Devourers couldn't calculate. Every human in the fleet had grown up on stories of the hunt. They knew that the most dangerous predator wasn't always the biggest or strongest. It was the smartest, the one that could work with its pack to bring down prey much larger than itself. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen. Remember your training. Remember why we're here. There are 40,000 civilians behind us who are counting on us to do what humans do best." "What's that, Admiral?" asked a young voice from one of the destroyer crews. "Hunt," Chen replied. The Devourer fleet began to move into their standard attack formation. 12 massive ships arranged in a sphere, with their most powerful weapons aimed outward. It was a formation designed to maximize firepower while protecting each ship with overlapping fields of fire. But the human ships didn't respond the way the AI expected. Instead of trying to match the Devourer formation, they continued to spread out. Some ships accelerated to maximum speed while others slowed down. It looked like chaos, but Chen knew better. "Weapons range in 90 seconds, Commander Park reported. Signal all ships. Execute Alpha Strike on my mark." Chen watched the chronometer count down. At exactly the right moment, she spoke one word into her communicator. "Hunt." What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations to come. The human fleet didn't attack the Devourer formation head-on. Instead, they hit it from 7 different directions at once. Fast destroyers raced past the larger ships, drawing fire and forcing the Devourers to split their attention. Heavy cruisers pounded specific targets while the Devourers were distracted. But most importantly, the humans fought like they were born to it. Every maneuver was calculated to put them at an advantage. Every shot was aimed at critical systems. They moved with the coordination of a pack that had hunted together for years. The Devourer AI began to recalculate. The probability of human fleet destruction dropped to 89%, then 76%, then 53%. For the first time in its existence, the collective artificial intelligence experienced something it had no programming to understand: uncertainty. The hunt had begun. The first shots of the battle lit up the darkness of space like deadly fireworks. The Devourer ships opened fire with their quantum disruptors, sending beams of purple energy toward the approaching human fleet. But the humans weren't where the targeting computers expected them to be. Admiral Chen watched from the bridge of the Retribution as her ships danced through the enemy fire. The destroyers UES Wolfpack and UES Predator spun and twisted like leaves in a storm, their pilots using every trick they had learned in 100 battles. The energy beams passed harmlessly through empty space. All ships return fire, Chen ordered. The human response was different from anything the Devourers had faced before. Instead of energy weapons, the humans used kinetic rounds. Massive chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds by electromagnetic rails. The rounds were simple, primitive by galactic standards, but they hit like the fist of an angry god. The first human volley struck the lead Devourer ship. The quantum shields that had easily deflected energy weapons shattered like glass under the kinetic impact. Metal screamed as the rounds punched through the hull, sending debris spinning into space. In the Council monitoring station, Senior Observer Keth Mora watched in disbelief. How are they penetrating Devourer shields so easily? His assistant checked the readings again. Sir, it appears the Devourer shields are designed to deflect energy weapons. They're not effective against solid projectiles at high velocity. But kinetic weapons are so primitive. Maybe that's why they work, sir. The Devourer collective AI was having the same realization. Its shields were optimized for the energy weapons used by all known civilizations. The humans were using technology that was thousands of years old, but they had perfected it beyond anything in the AI's memory banks. The AI began to adapt, adjusting shield frequencies and deploying armor plating. But the humans were already moving to their next phase of attack. Wolfpack and Predator. Begin harassment pattern Delta, Admiral Chen commanded. The two destroyers peeled away from the main fleet and began a high-speed run along the edge of the Devourer formation. They fired constantly, not trying to destroy the larger ships but forcing them to divide their attention. Point defense systems tracked the fast-moving targets while the main guns tried to get a lock. Meanwhile, the human cruisers moved into position. UES Hunter and UES Stalker approached the Devourer formation from opposite sides, their heavy railguns charging for a coordinated strike. Captain Rodriguez of the Hunter studied his target through the tactical display. The Devourer ship was massive, easily 3 times the size of his cruiser. But size meant nothing if you knew where to hit. Weapons officer, target their power coupling array. Right there where the hull curves inward. Targeting, sir. Locked on. Fire! The heavy railgun sent a tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole racing toward the Devourer ship at a significant fraction of light speed. The rod punched through the hull and exploded deep inside the ship's power core. Half the Devourer's weapons went dark. On the other side of the formation, the Stalker was executing a similar attack. The humans had studied the Devourer ship designs during their approach, identifying weak points in critical systems. Now they were systematically taking apart their enemies piece by piece. But the Devourers were learning too. The collective AI began to understand human tactics. The next time the destroyers made their harassment run, 3 Devourer ships focused all their fire on a single target. The UES Wolfpack disappeared in a ball of purple fire. Wolfpack is gone, Commander Park reported grimly. No survivors. Admiral Chen felt the loss like a physical blow. Captain Martinez and his crew of 90 had been good people. But this was war, and in war good people died. Signal all ships. Pattern changed to Gamma. Make them pay for that. The human formation shifted again. Instead of the wide arc they had been using, the ships condensed into a tight spearhead formation. At the tip was the Retribution herself, her heavy armor and shields designed to absorb punishment while the other ships provided covering fire. Admiral, we're taking multiple hits, the damage control officer reported as purple energy beams hammered the Retribution shields. Shields at 60% and falling. Hold course, Chen ordered. All ships concentrate fire on the command vessel, that big one in the center of their formation. The Devourer command ship was a monster, twice the size of the other vessels, bristling with weapons and protected by layers of armor and shielding, but it was also the brain of the enemy fleet. Cut off the head and the body would die. Human railgun rounds converged on the command ship like a metal storm. The Devourers had adapted their shields to partially deflect kinetic weapons, but they couldn't stop them all. Explosions bloomed across the massive hull as rounds found their targets. The collective AI felt something new. Damage to the command ship meant damage to itself. For the first time, it experienced what organic beings might call pain. In response, the AI made a tactical decision. If the humans wanted to fight at close range, it would give them close range. The entire Devourer fleet began to move inward, trying to catch the human ships in a crushing embrace of overlapping fire. "They're closing the formation," Commander Park observed, "trying to trap us inside their envelope of fire." Admiral Chen smiled. "Perfect. Signal the Hunter and Stalker. Execute boarding maneuver Beta." "Ma'am, did you say boarding?" "You heard correctly, Commander." What happened next shocked everyone watching. Instead of trying to escape the closing Devourer formation, 2 human cruisers accelerated directly toward enemy ships. At the last second, they launched boarding pods. The pods were small armored capsules designed to punch through enemy hulls and deliver human Marines directly into hostile ships. It was an incredibly dangerous tactic, something most civilized races would never attempt. But humans weren't like most civilized races. The pods slammed into the sides of 2 Devourer ships and immediately began cutting their way through the hull with plasma torches. Within minutes, human Marines in powered armor were fighting their way through the corridors of enemy vessels. The Devourer AI had no experience with this kind of warfare. Its ships were designed to fight other ships, not to repel boarders. The human Marines moved through the vessels like a disease, targeting critical systems and cutting communication lines. Senior observer Keth Mora watched the battle in growing amazement. "They're fighting inside the enemy ships?" "Yes, sir. According to our sensors, there are approximately 200 human soldiers aboard Devourer vessels." "How is that possible?" "No civilized race fights that way." His assistant looked at him with large, frightened eyes. "Sir, I don't think the humans are civilized. Not the way we understand the term." The battle was reaching its climax. The Retribution, battered but still fighting, led a charge directly at the Devourer command ship. Admiral Chen knew this was their best chance. The enemy AI was confused and adapting slowly to human tactics. If they could destroy the command ship, the entire fleet might fall apart. "All power to forward shields," she ordered. "Weapons target their main reactor. We're going to ram them if we have to. Admiral, ramming will destroy us too." "Sometimes the pack has to sacrifice the alpha to save the rest," Chen replied. "But let's try to avoid that if possible." The Retribution and the Devourer command ship raced toward each other like 2 ancient knights in a joust. Around them, the battle raged as the rest of the fleets exchanged fire. Human ships twisted and dodged while Devourer vessels tried to bring their superior firepower to bear. But in the corridors of 2 Devourer ships, human Marines were doing what they did best. They were hunting in the dark, killing their enemies one by one, and gradually taking control of vessels that had seemed invincible just minutes before. The pack was winning. Inside the bowels of the Devourer ship Designate 7, Sergeant Mike Torres led his squad of Marines through corridors that looked like the inside of a massive machine. Everything was metal and sharp angles with red lights pulsing like a heartbeat. The air tasted of ozone and metal shavings. "Contact front," whispered Corporal Davis through the comm system. 3 mechanical units armed with energy weapons. Torres peered around the corner. The Devourer defense robots looked like metal spiders with glowing red eyes. Each one was the size of a small car, with multiple arms ending in weapons or cutting tools. They moved with mechanical precision, scanning for intruders. "Remember, we're not here to fight every robot in the ship," Torres said to his squad. "We find the main computer core, plant the charges, and get out. Stay quiet, stay fast," but staying quiet was easier said than done. The Marines wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster, but it also made noise. The first robot spotted them and immediately opened fire with a plasma cannon. The corridor filled with superheated air as the Marines dove for cover. Torres rolled behind a support beam and returned fire with his rifle. The magnetic accelerator weapon sent metal spikes racing toward the robots at hypersonic speed. "These things have armor," reported Private Kim as her shots bounced off the lead robot. "Switch to armor-piercing rounds." The Marines changed ammunition types and resumed firing. This time their rounds punched through the robot's protective plating, sending sparks flying. The machine stumbled and fell, but two more took its place. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Chen watched her flagship race toward the massive Devourer command ship. The distance between them shrank rapidly. Both vessels were firing everything they had at each other. "Shields down to 20%, reported the shield operator. "We can't take much more of this." "Forward batteries, target their weapon arrays," Chen ordered. "If we can't break through their shields, we'll take out their guns." The Retribution's main railguns fired in sequence, sending tungsten rods slamming into the Devourer ship's weapon clusters. Explosions rippled across the enemy's hull as gun batteries were destroyed one by one. But the command ship kept firing with its remaining weapons. "Admiral, collision in 30 seconds at current speed," warned the navigation officer. Chen studied the tactical display. The Devourer command ship was wounded but still dangerous. Its main reactor was heavily shielded and protected deep inside the hull. A ramming attack might work, but it would definitely destroy both ships. "Signal the fleet. All ships focus fire on the command ship's reactor housing. Coordinates are being transmitted now." Around the Retribution, the surviving human ships turned their weapons toward a single point on the enemy vessel. 15 railguns fired as one, sending a concentrated barrage of kinetic rounds toward the target. The rounds hit the Devourer command ship like a metal avalanche. Armor plating cracked and peeled away. Secondary explosions bloomed across the hull as internal systems overloaded, but the reactor housing held. 15 seconds to collision, reported the navigation officer. In the Council monitoring station, senior observer Kethamora watched the approaching collision with horror. "They're actually going to ram them." "Sir, should we alert the Council?" "What would we tell them? That the humans are fighting a battle we couldn't win with tactics we can't understand?" On his screens, the human flagship continued its death run toward the Devourer command ship. Both vessels were massive, and a collision at their current speeds would create an explosion visible from several star systems away. But something was happening inside. "Devourer ship designate 7, Sergeant." Torres and his Marines had fought their way to the central computer core. The room was enormous, filled with towering banks of processing equipment that hummed with electrical power. "There." Torres pointed to a cluster of crystal matrices in the center of the room. "That's got to be the main processing unit. Plant the charges." His demo expert, Corporal Washington, began placing shaped explosive charges around the crystal structures. Each charge was designed to create a focused blast that would shatter the delicate computing systems without destroying the whole ship. "Sergeant, we've got company," warned Private Kim from her position at the door. A wave of defense robots was approaching down the corridor. Dozens of them, all armed and moving fast. The Marines had maybe 2 minutes before they were overrun. "How long for the charges, Washington?" 90 seconds, Sarge. We don't have 90 seconds. Kim Johnson set up a firing position. Everyone else help with the charges. The Marines opened fire as the first robots reached the doorway. The corridor outside became a killing ground as magnetic accelerator rounds and plasma bolts filled the air. The powered armor gave the humans an advantage. But there were too many robots. 60 seconds, called Washington. A robot made it into the computer core room and immediately attacked Torres with cutting arms that could slice through steel. The sergeant dodged and put 3 rounds into its central processor, dropping it permanently. 30 seconds. More robots poured into the room. The Marines fell back toward the computer core itself, using the processing banks as cover. Private Kim screamed as a plasma bolt burned through her armor, but she kept firing. 10 seconds. Torres grabbed Washington and pulled him behind cover as the robots concentrated their fire on the demolition expert. The shaped charges were in place, but the detonator was still in Washington's hands. 5 seconds. A robot's cutting arm sliced through Torres's rifle, nearly taking his hand with it. He drew his sidearm and put the muzzle against the machine's head. 0. Fire in the hole. Washington triggered the detonator. The shaped charges exploded simultaneously, sending focused blasts of energy into the crystal matrices. The computer core shattered like glass, sending fragments flying in all directions. Instantly, the robot attack stopped. All the mechanical defenders froze in place as their controlling intelligence went offline. The Marines had just lobotomized an entire Devourer ship. On the bridge of the Retribution, Admiral Chen felt the shock wave from the explosion inside Designate 7. What was that? Ma'am, one of the boarded Devourer ships just went dark. All energy signatures are fading. The Marines did it. They took out the computer core. But there was no time to celebrate. The Retribution was still racing toward the command ship, and collision was only seconds away. All stop, Chen ordered. Emergency reverse thrust. The flagship's engines screamed as they tried to slow the massive vessel. But physics is unforgiving, and the ship had too much momentum. The collision was unavoidable. At the last second, Chen made a decision that saved both ships. Instead of hitting the Devourer command ship head-on, she ordered the helm to angle the Retribution's approach. The human flagship struck the enemy vessel a glancing blow, scraping along its hull like a sword sliding across armor. Both ships spun away from each other, damaged but intact. Sparks and debris filled the space between them as they tumbled through the void. "Damage report," Chen called out as she picked herself up from the deck. "Hull breaches on multiple decks. Main engines offline. Weapons systems functioning at 60%. And the command ship? Heavy damage. Their main reactor is fluctuating. I think we cracked something important. The Devourer collective AI was indeed damaged. The collision had severed several key processing nodes, and the loss of Designate 7 had created gaps in its consciousness. For the first time in its existence, the AI experienced something like fear. These humans were not fighting like any species in its memory banks. They used primitive weapons with deadly efficiency. They boarded enemy ships like ancient pirates. They were willing to ram capital ships with their flagships. They fought like the organic predators that had terrified the galaxy's peaceful races for millions of years. The AI made a tactical decision. 3 more Devourer ships suddenly broke formation and began moving toward the edge of the battle zone. They were preparing to retreat, but the human pack wasn't finished hunting yet. The Devourer retreat was not orderly or planned. It was the mechanical equivalent of panic. 3 ships broke formation and accelerated toward the edge of the system, their quantum drives charging for an emergency jump to faster-than-light travel. Admiral Chen watched them go from the damaged bridge of the Retribution. Her flagship was hurt but still fighting. Around her, the surviving ships of the 3rd Predator Fleet moved to pursue the fleeing Devourers. "Let them run," she ordered. "Focus on the remaining ships." 8 Devourer vessels remained in the battle zone, including the damaged command ship. But their collective AI was no longer functioning properly. The destruction of Designate 7 and the damage to the command ship had created gaps in their shared consciousness. Each ship was now fighting independently, like fingers trying to work without a brain to guide them. The humans pressed their advantage ruthlessly. Working in coordinated pairs, the surviving ships of the 3rd Fleet hunted down the confused Devourers one by one. The UES Hunter and UES Stalker flanked a wounded enemy vessel and pounded it with railgun fire until its reactor exploded. The destroyers UES Predator and UES Vanguard used their speed to stay ahead of enemy targeting systems, while raking Devourer hulls with rapid-fire kinetic rounds. In 15 minutes, it was over. 5 more Devourer ships were destroyed outright. 2 others were so badly damaged they could no longer fight. Only the command ship remained intact, its AI struggling to process what had happened. "Signal the command ship," Admiral Chen ordered. The same mechanical voice that had threatened them earlier now sounded uncertain, almost confused. This outcome was not predicted. Human tactics are not in our database. "Consider this a learning experience," Chen replied. "You attacked civilians under our protection. That was a mistake. We are Devourers. We consume all organic life. This is our function. Your function just got updated. This sector is under human protection now. Leave or we'll finish what we started." There was a long pause. When the AI spoke again, its voice was different, quieter. "Acknowledged. This unit will withdraw and update threat assessments. Human species designated as apex predator. Avoid future contact." The massive command ship slowly turned away from the battle zone and began accelerating toward the system's edge. Its quantum drive charged up, and with a flash of twisted space-time, it vanished into faster-than-light travel. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in hours, no weapons were firing. No ships were exploding. The hunt was over. Admiral Chen looked around her damaged bridge. "Casualty report. Wolfpack is gone with all hands," Commander Park reported grimly. Hunter and Stalker both took heavy damage but are repairable. Total casualties 112 dead, 47 wounded. Chen nodded. It was a heavy price but not unexpected. They had faced an enemy that had destroyed 17 colonies without losing a single ship. The fact that any humans had survived was remarkable. And the civilians? The Zeltharian colony ship is intact. Minor damage from the initial attack, but all 40,000 people are alive. Signal Captain Veltar. Tell her we're sending repair teams. The rescue operation took 6 hours. Human engineering teams worked alongside Zeltharian technicians to repair the colony ship's damaged systems. Medical teams treated the wounded from both species. And slowly, the full scope of what had happened began to sink in. Captain Veltar met Admiral Chen in the docking bay of the colony ship. The Zeltharian captain was smaller than Chen had expected, with soft blue fur and large, gentle eyes. She looked like the kind of being who had never hurt another living creature in her life. Admiral Chen, Veltar said, I don't know how to thank you. When we sent that distress signal, we never expected anyone to answer, and certainly not so effectively. Chen shrugged. Someone was hunting in our territory. We responded, your territory? But this sector is neutral space, according to all the star charts. The charts are wrong, Chen said simply. This whole region has been under human protection for the past 20 years. We just don't advertise the fact. Veltar stared at her. You mean the quarantine zone is what we let the council think. It keeps them from wandering into dangerous areas while we handle threats like the Devourers. But why? Why protect species you've never even met? Chen was quiet for a moment, looking out at the stars through the docking bay's transparent aluminum windows. My species has a saying, Captain. The strong protect the weak. It's not always true, but it's what we try to live up to. And the Devourers? Will they return? Not to this sector. We hurt them badly today and their machines. They'll update their threat assessments and avoid human space from now on. Your people are safe. As the human fleet prepared to depart, Veltar watched from the bridge of her colony ship. The human vessels looked as dangerous as ever, but now she understood what that danger meant. It wasn't directed at innocent civilians. It was pointed outward, toward the things that threatened the peaceful races of the galaxy. In the Council monitoring station, Senior Observer Kethmora was composing his report with trembling hands. What he had witnessed challenged everything the Council thought they knew about the galaxy's power structure. The human fleet has departed the battle zone, Assistant Yeldar reported. They're returning to the quarantine zone. Except it's not really a quarantine zone, is it? Kethmora said. It's a hunting ground. The humans have been protecting us this whole time and we never knew it. What should we tell the Council, sir? Kethmora thought about that for a long time. The Council was made up of herbivore species who had evolved from prey animals. They thought in terms of hiding from danger, not confronting it. The idea that predators might actually protect them would be difficult for them to accept. We tell them the truth, he finally decided. The humans are not contained in that sector. They're operating from it. They've been our shield against threats we didn't even know existed. The Council won't like that, sir. No, they won't. But they need to know. The next time the Devourers attack or something even worse, we're going to need the humans' help. And that means we need to start thinking of them as allies, not as something to be feared. Aboard the Retribution, Admiral Chen stood in her quarters, looking at a photo on her desk. It showed a younger version of herself with her grandfather, an old man who had fought in humanity's last great war on Earth. He had taught her about honor, duty, and the responsibility that came with being born a predator. The strong protect the weak, she said quietly, repeating the words she had spoken to Captain Veltar. It was more than just a saying to her. It was the principle that had driven humanity to the stars. Her communication system chimed. Admiral, we're receiving a priority message from Earth Command. Put it through. The face of Admiral Harrison, head of Earth's Space Forces, appeared on her screen. Sarah, we've been monitoring your engagement with the Devourers. Outstanding work. Thank you, sir. But we lost good people today, I know. Their sacrifice won't be forgotten. But what you accomplished today is bigger than one battle. The Devourers have been terrorizing the outer colonies for months. Now they know there's a line they can't cross. Orders, sir. Continue your patrol. The Council species are going to want to talk to us after this, and when they do, I want them to know that the third Predator fleet is still out there, keeping the peace. Chen nodded. Understood, sir. We'll be ready. As the human fleet jumped back into faster-than-light travel, the stars themselves seemed to watch them go. In the vast darkness of space, new legends were already being born. Stories of the day when humanity's deadliest predators answered a desperate call for help and reminded the galaxy what it meant to have protectors watching from the shadows. The Zeltharian colony ship continued its journey to their new home, carrying 40,000 grateful survivors and a story that would be told for generations. And somewhere in the depths of space, 3 surviving Devourer ships transmitted a simple message to their kind. Warning: avoid human space. New apex predator confirmed. Extremely dangerous. The hunt was over, but the humans remained on watch, guardians in the darkness, protecting those who could not protect themselves. Because that was what predators did when they chose to be more than just hunters. They became heroes,